My wife had an affair with her high school ex because she assumed I had no idea. I followed the trail of her lies, exposed the relationship, and watched it all fall apart for them in a single day. I'm 38, married to my wife, Claire, 36, for 9 years. We've been together since our mid-20s, no kids, both working full-time. I'm in commercial insurance underwriting, steady hours, predictable income. Claire works in marketing for a regional retail chain. On paper, we're stable. Mortgage paid on time, decent savings, no dramatic fights, at least not the kind you'd call explosive. Lately, though, she's been different. Sharper, shorter fuse. The kind of energy where every small thing I do is apparently wrong. It started about 6 months ago. She began picking fights over stupid details. The way I loaded the dishwasher. The brand of coffee I bought. The fact that I sometimes worked late during renewal season. She'd make little comments about how boring my life was, how predictable I am. I brushed it off at first because work was stressful for her and I figured she was venting. But here's the thing. Claire isn't subtle when she's unhappy. She becomes sarcastic and dismissive. She doesn't withdraw. She attacks. And the attacks felt strategic. Like she was building a case against me. Around that same time, she reconnected with some old high school friends. Reunion planning, group chats, that sort of thing. One name kept popping up in conversation. Dylan, her high school boyfriend. Apparently, they dated for 2 years before he left for college and cheated on her. She always described him as immature and selfish. At first, she talked about him in an eye-rolling way. Then she started defending him, saying people change, saying he was misunderstood back then. I noticed because she'd bring him up out of nowhere. We'd be watching TV, and she'd say something like Dylan used to love this band. Or Dylan always said I'd look good with shorter hair. It was subtle enough that if I mentioned it, I'd sound insecure. So I didn't. What made me uneasy wasn't just the name dropping. It was the shift in how she treated me. The comparisons weren't direct, but they were implied. She'd say I lacked spontaneity, that I was too cautious, that she missed feeling wanted instead of scheduled. We've always had access to each other's phones. No rules, no secrecy. A few weeks ago, I noticed she started flipping hers face down. Not locked away, just deliberately angled. I didn't accuse her of anything. I didn't even ask. I just started paying attention. The first thing I noticed was how she started rewriting our history in real time. If I mentioned a trip we took, she would roll her eyes and say it was more work than fun. If I brought up a dinner date, she would say I only did it because I felt guilty. If I offered to plan something, she would say I would just pick something safe and boring, like I was incapable of surprising her. It was exhausting because the conversation always ended with me defending myself against motives she assigned to me. And she did it with this smug tone like she was the only adult in the room and I was a slow student she had to correct. At the same time, she got more protective of her time. She started having recurring plans that did not exist before. Drinks with the reunion group, a quick coffee with a friend, a late meeting, a work event. It was never one big change. It was a bunch of small ones that stacked up until I realized she was gone 3 or 4 nights a week. If I asked basic questions, she acted like I was interrogating her. Where are you going? Who is going to be there? When will you be back? She would sigh dramatically and say I was being controlling. Not yelling, not crying. Just this constant irritation that made me feel like a nuisance for wanting normal information. I backed off because I did not want to be that guy. I did not want to check her location or scroll through her messages. I wanted to believe the simplest explanation, which was that she was stressed and acting out. Then one night, she came home too upbeat. Not happy, not relaxed. Energized, like someone had plugged her in. She walked past me with her phone in her hand, smiling at the screen, and when I said hey, she barely looked up. She went straight to the bathroom and shut the door. When she came out, she was suddenly cold again. Snappy, picking at me because I had left a light on in the hallway. I remember thinking it felt like she was trying to start a fight on purpose, like she needed me to be the bad guy so she could justify something in her head. That was the first night I checked something, and I did it in the most boring way possible. I opened our shared cell plan account on my laptop. I was not looking for drama. I just wanted to confirm I was imagining things. Her number had a new pattern. A lot of calls and texts to one specific number, mostly during her so-called work events. I stared at it long enough that my coffee went cold. I did not confront her that night. There is no upside to confronting someone with partial information. I screenshotted the call log for my own record and closed the browser. The number was not saved under any name in our shared contacts. That in itself meant nothing. But the frequency did. Dozens of texts a day. Short calls during lunch hours. Longer calls late at night on days she claimed she was exhausted. The next step was simple. I reverse searched the number. It took less than a minute. Dylan. Full name. Linked to a small real estate firm in the next town over. Same guy from high school. Same last name she had been casually mentioning for months. What bothered me was not that she was talking to an ex. People reconnect. It happens. What bothered me was the narrative she had been building about me at the exact same time. You are predictable. You are boring. You never surprise me. You do not make me feel wanted. Those comments stopped feeling random and started feeling rehearsed. Like she was justifying a comparison I was not part of. I did not tell her I knew. Instead, I paid attention to timing. On Tuesday, she said she had a late marketing meeting at the office. I checked her location through the family app we both use for travel safety. She was not at her office. She was parked near a strip of restaurants about 20 minutes away. I waited. She came home at 10:30 smelling like a bar patio. Not drunk. Just light beer and perfume layered together. She walked in and immediately started complaining about how draining her job was. How her boss never appreciates her. I let her talk. I nodded in the right places. Later that night, she fell asleep with her phone on the nightstand. Face down as usual. I did not need to unlock it. The preview notifications were enough. One message popped up from Dylan while I was brushing my teeth. Had a great time tonight. Worth the wait. There are moments where something shifts quietly inside you. Not explosive, just a line moving. I felt calm. The next morning she woke up irritable, snapping at me for not replacing the Brita filter fast enough. I watched her criticize me over filtered water while texting another man under the table. That was when I decided I was done being passive. I was not going to argue about filters while she built a second relationship in plain sight. I was going to document everything first. Documentation sounds dramatic, but it really was not. I did not hire a private investigator or plant anything illegal. I stayed within what was already accessible to me. First, I exported 3 months of our shared phone records. Timestamps, durations, frequency. I highlighted every interaction with his number. The pattern was obvious. Spikes on days she claimed work stress. Gaps when we were physically together all day. Long calls on evenings she said she needed space. Second, I started saving screenshots of the location history from our shared app. Again, nothing invasive. We both enabled it years ago after a snowstorm stranded her on the highway. She had never objected to it. Over 2 weeks, her supposed office meetings mapped almost perfectly to the same 3 locations. A wine bar, a coffee shop, an apartment complex. The apartment complex was the detail that shifted this from emotional to physical in my mind. I did not accuse her. Instead, I tested something small. One Friday, she said she was staying late at the office to finish a campaign launch. I told her I was grabbing dinner with a colleague. I did not actually have plans. I drove 20 minutes in the opposite direction, parked, and waited. At 8:15, her location pinged at the apartment complex again. I drove there. It is a mid-range place. Not luxury. Not run down. The kind of building a mid-30s real estate agent could afford. I parked across the street where I could see the entrance. At 8:42, Dylan walked out to the parking lot. I recognized him from social media. Taller than me, more athletic build. He leaned into the passenger side of Claire's car. Kissed her. Not a peck. A comfortable kiss. She touched his face like it was routine. I stayed in my car. I did not confront them in the parking lot. That would have created a scene and given her space to rewrite what I saw. Instead, I took 2 photos from a distance. Clear enough to identify them. Not invasive. Just factual. Then I left before she did. When she got home around 10, she complained about how draining the fake meeting had been. She criticized me for not folding the laundry. She asked why I seemed quiet. I told her I was just tired. And that was the last normal night we had. The next morning, I took a personal day from work. Not impulsively. I emailed my manager, told him I needed to handle something at home. I wanted clarity before emotion. I printed the phone logs. I printed the location screenshots. I printed the 2 photos from the parking lot. I laid them out on the dining table in chronological order. Not to be theatrical, to keep myself grounded in facts. Claire left that morning saying she had an early strategy session. She barely looked at me. She made a comment about how distant I had been lately and how she felt like she was living with a wall. I did not argue. While she was gone, I called a local attorney just to confirm something basic. The house is in both our names. In our state, I cannot legally change the locks or throw her belongings on the lawn. What I can do is ask her to leave voluntarily. If she refuses, then we handle it through formal separation. I was not going to do anything illegal or dramatic. I just wanted her out of my immediate space. She came home around 4 in the afternoon, earlier than usual. I was sitting at the dining table. She walked in, saw the papers, and her entire posture changed. Not confusion, recognition. I asked one question. How long? She tried to pivot immediately. Said it was not what it looked like. Said I was overreacting. Said Dylan was just someone she could talk to because I had become emotionally unavailable. I slid the phone records toward her. Then the location history. Then the photos. Her face went pale for about 3 seconds. Then it hardened. Instead of apologizing, she got defensive. Said I invaded her privacy. Said I must have been looking for a reason to blame her. Said if I had been more exciting, she would not have needed attention elsewhere. That was the moment any doubt left me. I told her calmly that she needed to pack a bag and leave by the end of the night. I said I would cover the mortgage for now. I said she could stay with Dylan if he was so important. She laughed at first, like I was bluffing. I was not. When she realized I was serious, she called me dramatic. She said I could not just kick her out. I repeated that I was asking her to leave voluntarily to de-escalate. If she refused, we would be speaking through attorneys within the week. She stared at me for a long time. Then she went upstairs and started packing. She packed louder than necessary. Drawers slamming. Closet doors banging. It was performance anger, the kind meant to make me question whether I was overreacting. I stayed downstairs. I did not follow her room to room. I did not engage. After about 20 minutes, she came down with an overnight bag and her laptop case. Not a full move. Just enough to signal she assumed this was temporary. She stood by the door and said I was making a mistake. That this was something we could work through. That I was choosing pride over our marriage. I asked her one more direct question. Are you still seeing him? She paused. Not long. Just enough. She said it was complicated. That was answer enough. I told her this was not complicated for me. You lied repeatedly. You carried on a physical relationship. You criticized me to justify it. That is not confusion. That is a decision. She tried to pivot again, said I was being cold. Said I was acting like I never cared. It was strange listening to her reframe the situation as if I was abandoning her. I opened the front door. I told her she could contact me by email about logistics, utilities, bills, next steps. I said I would not be communicating through text. I did not want emotional back and forth. She hesitated on the porch. I think she expected me to chase her, to soften, to say come back inside and let's talk. I did not. She got in her car and drove away. The second her taillights disappeared at the end of the street, I blocked her number. I blocked her on every social platform we used. Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn. Not out of anger, out of structure. If she needed to reach me, she could email. That was the only channel I was willing to leave open. Then I went upstairs and moved her remaining clothes into the guest room closet. I was not throwing anything out. I was creating physical separation to match the decision that had just been made. About 30 minutes later, my phone lit up repeatedly. Unknown number. Then another. Then a FaceTime attempt. I did not answer. I checked my email instead. Nothing yet. Which told me she had not expected the block. She assumed she could manage me emotionally from a distance. That she could send long explanations, half apologies, or guilt-soaked paragraphs until I softened. That door was closed. If she wanted to speak, she would have to do it deliberately and in writing. And she would have to think before she hit send. An hour later, a new email account appeared in my inbox with her name attached to it. The subject line was simple. You are overreacting. I did not open the email immediately. I made dinner first. Something simple. Ate at the counter instead of the table. The house was quiet in a way that felt clean rather than empty. No commentary about how I chopped vegetables. No passive-aggressive sighs. When I finally opened the message, it was exactly what I expected. She said I was escalating something that could have been handled privately. She said she never intended for things to go this far. She said Dylan was just someone who made her feel heard when I had stopped trying. There was no direct admission. No apology for lying. No acknowledgement of the physical part one had documented. Instead, she framed it like I had forced her into a corner by reacting too strongly. I replied with one paragraph. I am not debating whether I am overreacting. I am ending a marriage where my wife lies consistently and blames me for her choices. If you want to discuss logistics, keep it practical. That was it. 5 minutes later, another email came in. The tone shifted. She said she could come home and we could set boundaries. She said she would cut contact with him. She said she only went to his apartment a few times and it was not what I thought. The problem with that argument is simple. I already knew what I thought. I saw enough. I did not respond to that message. Instead, I did something she did not expect. I looked up Dylan's real estate profile. It listed his brokerage and office number. Public information. Then I searched further and found that he was engaged 3 years ago. The engagement ended abruptly. No explanation online. I also found photos of him and Claire together at what looked like a recent group reunion event, tagged publicly by someone else. Arms around each other in a way that did not read as casual. Claire had been careful on her own accounts. Dylan had not. That told me something important. He was either careless or convinced this was harmless. Either way, he had as much to lose as she did. And I was done protecting both of them. I am not a revenge-driven person. I am methodical. Before doing anything, I double-checked timelines. I lined up the dates of her supposed late meetings with the photos from the reunion and the spikes in their call logs. There was overlap. Enough to show consistency, not a one-off mistake. Then I did something simpler than reaching out to him. I forwarded the parking lot photos and the summarized call logs to Claire's parents and to 2 mutual friends who had hosted the recent reunion event. I kept the message short and factual. I wrote that I had discovered an ongoing affair, that I had asked Claire to leave the house, and that I wanted transparency before rumors started. No insults. No exaggeration. Just dates and documentation. I did not contact Dylan directly. Within 20 minutes my inbox exploded. Claire emailed from another new address. "What did you do?" That was the subject line. No denial. No confusion. Just panic. Apparently, one of the mutual friends had texted Dylan immediately after receiving my message. I did not need to orchestrate anything. Social circles do the work for you. Her next email was furious. She said I was trying to ruin her reputation. She said I had no right to involve other people. She accused me of being vindictive. I did not respond at all. No clarification. No defense. Nothing. About an hour later, she sent another message. "He is not answering me." Then another. "You are blowing up everything." Then another. "My parents are calling me." I stayed silent. I had not lied. I had not dramatized. I had simply removed the secrecy that made their relationship convenient. The structure they had built depended on privacy and plausible deniability. Once that disappeared, so did the stability of whatever they thought they had. By early evening, her tone shifted again. This time it was not anger. It was fear. The fear came through in the pacing of her emails. The earlier messages were paragraphs. Defensive. Accusatory. Structured enough to maintain some pride. By 7 that night, they were fragmented. "My dad thinks I destroyed my marriage. Dylan is not picking up. Please answer me." For the first time, she was not blaming me for being boring or emotionally unavailable. She was reacting to consequences she did not anticipate. I still did not respond. Instead, I focused on practical steps. I scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney for the following Monday. I moved half of our joint savings into a separate account in my name, which is legal in my state as long as I document it and account for it during proceedings. I changed the passwords to utilities and streaming services, not to punish her, but to prevent unnecessary access disputes. Around 8:30, my doorbell rang. I did not expect that. When I checked the camera, it was Claire. She looked different. Not dramatic. Just unsettled. No makeup. Hair tied back. She was holding her phone like it was a lifeline. I opened the door, but did not invite her inside. She started talking immediately. Said everything had spiraled. Said Dylan told her he needed space because he did not sign up for public drama. Said her parents were furious and disappointed. Said she never thought I would actually expose it. There it was. She assumed I would absorb it quietly. I told her calmly that I did not expose anything false. I clarified facts. What other people chose to do with that information was not my responsibility. She asked if she could come back home. Not permanently, just until things calmed down. I said no. I explained that the house is not a reset button. Trust is not something you pause and resume once external pressure builds. She tried one last angle. Said she made a mistake. Said she was confused. Said she thought I would fight for her instead of pushing her away. I told her I am not competing with another man for my own marriage. That seemed to land. She stood there for a long moment, waiting for softness that was not coming. Eventually she nodded, turned, and walked back to her car. This time, there was no slammed door. No angry exit. Just quiet. And for the first time in months, I felt certain. The next morning I woke up before my alarm. For months I had been waking up tense, even before I understood why. That low-level anxiety that something was off, but you cannot yet prove it. That was gone. I made coffee. Sat at the kitchen counter. The house felt like mine again, not like a shared stage where I was constantly being evaluated. Claire sent one final email that morning. It was shorter than the others. I did not think you would actually walk away. That sentence summed up everything. She did not think I would check the phone records. She did not think I would drive to the apartment complex. She did not think I would ask her to leave. And she definitely did not think I would remove the secrecy that kept her version of events intact. I replied once, I am not walking away. I am stepping out of something that no longer exists. Then I contacted the attorney and officially started the filing process. Over the next week, communication stayed limited to logistics. She moved the rest of her things out while I was at work. We divided furniture without drama. I kept the house and refinanced. She signed without contesting it. I suspect she wanted distance from anything that reminded her how quickly this unraveled. From what I heard through mutual friends, Dylan cooled off once everything became public. He apparently told people he did not want to be involved in a messy divorce. The relationship that was exciting and secret did not survive in daylight. I did not reach out to confirm. I did not need to. The entire situation collapsed in less than 24 hours once the lies stopped being protected. There was no screaming finale. No dramatic confrontation, just exposure and consequence. Looking back, the affair itself did not shock me as much as the assumption behind it. She believed I would tolerate disrespect quietly, that I would internalize the criticism and try harder while she entertained an alternative. That was the miscalculation. I am not proud of how it ended. Divorce is not something I ever planned for, but I am clear about why it ended. When someone treats your stability like a backup plan, the only move that makes sense is to remove yourself from the board. And once I did, everything they built without honesty fell apart on its own.
To contextualize an experience you're having or to learn about something new. Like right now, I'm super fascinated in AI and robotics. So I'll call up a friend. Actually, I called Lex on this. He gave me some suggestions, but another professor, also at MIT, actually, I called him up and said, look, I don't need a degree. This was maybe 2 years ago. I don't need a degree, but I really want to understand at a higher level artificial intelligence and this sort of coming wave challenges the opportunities. Like, can you create a curriculum? As if I was a freshman at MIT, can you just create something for me of materials I can read, of articles I can read, of podcasts that you think are particularly informative? And he said, sure. 3 weeks later, I'd kind of forgotten about it. I thought he had as well. He sends me this beautiful curriculum that I pounded through over the next 5 months, and it was amazing. So I do that.